welcome to Business Uncomplicated.
Finally,
Believe it?
finally.
It's our inaugural debut of our podcast. We're so fancy now. Um,
We're, we are always fancy, Rich.
well, that is true. That is true. Um, so it's crazy that we're doing this, but I'm super excited for it. How are you feeling?
I'm excited, nervous, but mostly I'm really interested to kind of see, okay, how's this all going to play out? And we just
Right,
got to get on with it to figure out how it's going to play out.
right, right.
I'm super
Um,
excited for what we have planned.
yeah. I hope everybody is super excited. I think we're going to have some great guests, and it's been interesting going through the process of doing this. I was saying to somebody today, I was like, you listen to podcasts and it seems so natural and everybody seems so effortless. And then you start doing it and you're like, oh, this is really kind of complicated. It's a
I don't
little.
sound like Mel Robbins. That's so weird.
I don't sound like Will Arnett and Sean Hayes from Smart. Um, Maybe I do. I don't know. So cool. So for people joining us, I'm Rich Nazzaro, co-founder of SaaS Business Advisors, and joined by my lovely co-host, Andy Worobel. And we started Business Uncomplicated. This is our podcast to support our business, which we started a couple of years ago. And we're now venturing into this world of podcasting to really share with everybody our thoughts, but invite people in the industry who we value their opinions, really respect what they've done. And we want to focus a lot of our conversation around digital transformation. So when we talk about digital transformation, I mean, that covers a wide range of things, but each episode may have touch upon a part of it. So we have episodes coming about AI. We have episodes coming up about branding. We're going to talk about just development, how you develop on platforms. So as we move through this, we may have talks about strictly about digital transformation, which we'll really dive into, and methodology and things we think are important to think about. But the guests that we bring on, we really want them to share with you their journey, what they've been through, how they've solved some of business's complex problems, and how they continue to focus on either helping customers solve their problems or how they've, as a owner or a leader in a company, have solved the problems for themselves, leveraging either outside consultancy or just methodologies that they've created internally. So we're really excited to bring you these topics, and we're gonna make it as informative as possible. We're gonna try to be fun and be a little humorous at the same time, but really want people to come on and give you guys actionable insights. We'd like each episode to be something that you could take away from it, whether it's a little nugget. I know when I listen to podcasts, as I'm sure you do, Andy, it's like, oh, that's a really good idea.
Right.
Oh, I should implement that. Or, hey, I never thought of it that way. In fact, I was talking to somebody today and they had the great quote. They said, we're still solving the same problem. The technology has changed. The technology has gotten smarter. And I thought that was a really smart comment that they
That's
made.
exactly right. Every client we go into, the problems are pretty similar. And frankly, the problems have not shifted so fundamentally
Right.
in the past 10, 20 years. But you're right, how we solve them is a little bit different,
Right.
and it's faster, and the innovation is really, really exciting as we look to solve much of the same problem, which is we want to be more efficient. We want to grow our companies. Like, those things don't change from year to year or even decade to decade. Unfortunately, that just shows how long we've been in the business.
Please. I mean, I am like just a newbie here.
100%. Yeah.
No, and I think that's true. And I think that it was a really smart statement. And I wrote it down when they said it because it really just did trigger the fact that, in the evolution of our careers, which we'll get into here in a minute, I think that there's always been this problem to solve, right? And so a very smart friend of ours always says, what problem are you solving? Like, that's her question every time she approaches a problem as a CIO. What problem are we solving here? And I think you're right. The problems haven't fundamentally changed, right? We're looking for our employees to be more efficient. We're looking to create a competitive edge and provide, our salespeople or our CS people or our marketing people the right messaging, the right information to nail that customer presentation to get that deal, the right competitive intelligence or the right market spin to ensure people are listening. And although technology has evolved, that problem still exists, right? And people are solving it in multiple different ways.
The amount of data has changed. I will give
Yeah,
that. But
that's
the
true.
data problems haven't changed.
Right, right,
You still got to take care of it.
right,
So,
right. And in fact, I think in the world of AI, data and content is even more important. I mean, we've
absolutely.
for years talked about data. Our really good friend was Big Data, right? On the cover
True.
of
True.
CIO
That's
magazine,
true.
Big Data, right?
Yep.
That was like 10 years ago. So I think it's always been true. And with like Salesforce buying Informatica for $8 billion, it just shows that they believe that too, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. Rich, tell us about your background. Why should people be listening to you?
why should
Speaking of
anybody
Salesforce
why
and all
should
those things.
anybody listen to me? No, that's a great point. And so so I always say no matter where I've been in my career or what industry, it's always been about making things more efficient. So I mean, I started my career back in banking, and I was telling somebody today who is much younger than me, talking about jet forms. And I don't know if you remember jet forms, but that was like the first automated tool of taking paper and putting it in a form and sending it through email. And that was like revolutionary in the 90s, right? And so in all my career steps, starting in banking, in my early part of my career, I've always kind of focused on that intersection of business and technology, right? That's how I would say I fit best or feel more comfortable. And what I mean by that is I believe business process is fundamentally how we understand what we do and how we do it and how humans actually interact. I think technology is the enabler in which helps us be more efficient to do so. And the intersection of those two things create a lot of content and data, which we mine to get insights about our business to become better and smarter. So as I worked through my career, I've worked on a number of technology launches. Most notably, when I was at Accenture, I led the global deployment of Salesforce at Dell. And at the time, it was the first ELA Salesforce had ever signed. It was the largest implementation of Salesforce. And it was really the first time, or one of the first times, that Salesforce actually integrated with a customer master. Prior, Salesforce used to sell around IT because they're like, you don't need IT, it's software as a service.
Right.
What they found out as they got into the enterprise is that the enterprise, all their data was in the data warehouse and it was connected and you can't move forward. And that entered IT, right, into this equation. And so if you think about the use case back then, I mean, we're talking 2007, 2008. It was really because Dell, a global company, $60 billion at the time, 178 countries they operated in, they wanted a single view of their pipeline. So in a $60 billion company had no single view of their pipeline, no standardized sales process that cut across their entire business. And so our goal first was to, implement that sales process, but to provide them a tool that complemented that sales process that every region would report sales the same way. So when Michael Dell wanted a readout of what the sales forecast looked like, it was apples to apples across his company, which nowadays we think is, well, that's just table stakes. Like,
Right.
why would you not have
But
that?
not everybody's still doing it.
But fair enough, right?
It's, or yeah, different levels of maturity doing it,
Right,
different levels of data. Data is always, just a challenge.
right.
So again, the problems don't always change.
True,
How we solve them
true,
sometimes
true.
is different.
And so from there, I worked for I was at Accenture, and then I actually went and worked for Dell. And always the joke is I had to deal with what I created, right? Like I had to be I couldn't be the consultant that walked away from the quote unquote Frankenstein I created. I actually had to then manage it.
Right.
So then I worked at Dell for years, and CA, being in an IT leader role, managing IT systems and IT implementations and transformations. And then I took a step aside and did consulting, and worked as an independent consultant for a couple of years, and then eventually went to the mothership, Salesforce. So I've been in the Salesforce ecosystem for so many years, as a partner, as a vendor, as a customer, that I eventually joined Salesforce and worked in Salesforce for about 8 years, doing various roles. Mostly started with helping them manage the deployment of Lightning. So when they switched platforms, which is the first major pivot of their platform in 15 years, when they introduced Lightning, um, our group was responsible for making sure people adopted it, understood it, drive awareness, build products around it, on how they'd adopt it, and eventually moved into operations roles, where I led operations for CS, and that was really focused on data, right? What is the data telling us? How is our team being efficient? How can we be more efficient? What tools can we use to understand our customers, understand customer sentiment? And was and did that for a number of years before I left, and we started SaaS Business Advisors. So
Exciting.
that's kind of where I came from. But let's talk about your background, because it's a little similar, but a different take.
Similar,
Yeah.
yeah, and a little different all at the same time. So my background's in marketing, and I am a marketer through and through. I love it. It's just naturally kind of the way I think. But if we think back to when the Earth was cooling and CRM was just becoming a thing, marketing was always, like, okay, I'm spending all these marketing dollars, and what in the heck am I getting for it? You talked about your pipeline. We disconnected pipeline where sales own the pipeline, but marketing, to do our jobs well, we were helping with that, but we couldn't necessarily measure it. And so then in the same time, technology comes around that actually can help us do that job better and really help us to measure it. So I worked for a publishing company, commodity publishing company at that point in time, Platts, which is part of McGraw Hill, and we decided to bring on Eloqua, which at that point in time was the leader, and it was absolutely transformational to our business, that suddenly sales and marketing were sitting side by side and the arguments were going away because we were all working toward the same goal. And that really required a shift, not just in how we marketed, but in how then the team was structured. And so where we'd had, as a global company, we had, regional groups, we had, some demand gen that we were doing. Marketing automation made it a whole new ballgame. And so suddenly we had a need for an operations team. And so that's where I went from there. And that was just super exciting to really restructure the way that we were looking at marketing, and it allowed us to go so much faster. From there, I did time in Dell. We both lived in Austin.
Right.
So we did have Dell
Right.
in common. And at Dell, they had such an amazing machine in their demand gen space. And so that was really great to see, okay, at scale, how is this working? Because it was a completely different
Right.
scale than we'd had
It's
previously.
huge.
And
You
then
got it
from
down.
there, yeah, it's great, great team, and really seeing again where, okay, we've got IT, we speak the same language, but now we need to have that operational layer within the marketing space that is fully connected to IT, but we've got to be in lockstep with what's happening. How do we plan for it? How do we continually extract more value out of the technology that we're invested in and
But
that our team, has to have to do its core job?
right, what I've always found interesting about operations groups, a lot of times, that is not, I feel, well respected or well understood, is they really are the interpreter, right,
A hundred
between the
percent.
business and IT. And I think that for most operations groups, if run well, they are
Right.
really the people who understand the business the best, because they're
Yeah.
looking at the data, they're looking at the technology, they're looking at the business process, and they're usually the ones being told, like, here's the outcome. And it's not really that IT doesn't understand outcomes or business doesn't understand technology. It's just the approach, to your point about how they're going about it, is a little different.
Absolutely. And you take from the discipline of both sides too. You
Right.
need the discipline that IT has done such a, great
Right.
job of, developing methodologies and, you know, really taking a very disciplined and structured approach, which is terrific. And then
Right.
blending that with, really the art that is, our go-to-market strategy. That obviously it's steeped in hard data, but it's also got some art because at the end of the day, you are working with humans. And so we need to figure out, like, how is it that we connect? And some of that is by leveraging the data and what we know about people. Some of it is just the pure creative and, creating that emotion that marketers are so terrific at. So that I absolutely love that from that perspective. That's what I was lucky enough to go continue to do when I went to Eloqua. And my job there was really to help companies. I would come in with the services team for implementations. And a lot of the conversation was around, okay, we know where you want to go,
Right.
but now we got to set up your team and your processes a little bit differently in order to really get there. And so that was a really fun time working with them in terms of just, okay, how do we manage our leads? How do we manage our data? How do we operate this system that, IT will support us, but they're not going to be running
Right.
things in the back
Right.
end that holds all your campaign data and all of your,
Right.
all of your source data. So that was really terrific. And so that led me into consulting. And I would call myself a reluctant consultant because I take it so seriously that when I am giving people advice, that it is true and tested. And I mean, I will give everything to make sure that it's successful. So
Well,
I love
you know
it
the
and I
old
hate it because there are times I just don't have that. I just think, oh, my ego isn't big enough for
but
this.
you know the old saying on how you're a consultant, right? Like,
What's that?
like, I read an article on how I'm a consultant, right? Like,
I slept at a Holiday Inn last night. I'm a consultant.
now I saw a TikTok video. I know what I'm talking about.
Right, right, absolutely. Fortunately or unfortunately for both of us, we've been in those trenches.
Right.
We have war wounds to show from
Right.
that. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. It's a little beyond.
So why did we start this business? And what are we doing?
Mm. Other than drinking wine and saying, "Oh my gosh, like we have such similar problems."
Right.
We're tackling this with our clients or within our own companies, and so that's the fun thing when
Right.
when you were like, "Okay, like I'm starting this business.
Right.
Okay, okay, this is going to be fun."
But it's
We've
been 2 years of an evolution, right? Like, I mean,
It has been. Have we learned anything?
we've learned a lot. We've learned, I mean, probably that's a whole nother episode of what we've learned
100%.
along the way, which would be interesting. But I mean, 2 years ago when we started, we had a different notion for what the business would be.
True.
And I think over the last 2 years, we've really, I guess, identified who we were, right? And I think the funny thing that happened along the way is when you came to us a month or so ago and said, "You realize this is who we are," and it was our aha moment to be like, "Oh, yeah, we're
Why are we
not all
trying to
those other things
shift?
we think we
Right,
are."
exactly, exactly. Let's just do what we do, what we've always done, and that
Right.
we do extremely well, that people keep calling us and asking us to do.
Right.
Like,
Well,
we
kind of
are the
going back
smart
to the
guys.
ego thing, right? Like, we've done this a little bit without ego, which is not surprising. I mean, most people don't go into a business saying, "I am the greatest in the world," right? I think anytime anybody starts a business, there's fear, there's uncertainty. We suffer from the imposter syndrome, right?
For sure.
Um, but I think that what we've landed on in terms of what SaaS Business Advisors is, and how we want to approach people is true to who we are and what we've done over the course of our career, and feel like at this point in time we have something we can provide to people that's of value. So with that being said, what do we do?
What do we do? So, SaaS Business Advisors, what do? We help you to really go beyond an implementation and really get to business outcomes. And I think when you talk about what we do, the big thing is we want to drive value through outcomes. And so, how do we do that? It is that translation layer between the technical, completing a project, and then really extracting that business value. Because when we work with system integrators, when we work with companies, like, it's all well and good that we fulfill the SOW, that we tick off all of the boxes saying, yes, according to the project plan, we have finished this. What doesn't always happen is that we get to the business case said that we were going to have these benefits, whether it's efficiencies, whether it's cost savings, whether it's growth. We help you to really make sure that the project plan is getting you all the way to the finish line.
Well, and I think that that's the challenge across most organizations, and we'll talk a little bit here about digital transformation, but I think that for most projects, and this is dating back to as any project I have done, when you walk in the first day on the project, they're like, this project is aimed to transform how we do blah, 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 blah. And we're going to make people more efficient, and we're going to drive cost out of the, when I worked in banking in the 90s, all the banks were buying the other banks, and they're like, we're going to save $72 billion. They never did, right? And so I think that's a real critical skill set that we focus on and we bring to the table is we really want to focus on what the success metric is, because when you do a technical implementation or you do a transformation, it is big, it is complicated, there are many moving parts. And I think people get distracted with, we're in development. Oh, now we have to launch the software. What doesn't often happen in concert with that is, well, what are the risks? Where's the change management? Did we understand the process enough to deliver the right technology? Did we understand the data? Is the data clean? Is the content clean? Now, in the world of AI, those are so critical, right? And so all those factors contribute to the outcome and contribute to the ROI. And, I think our position in how we help customers is, I always say, looking under the rocks and around the corners to the things that maybe weren't placed in the SOW originally, that potentially you don't have the skill set within your team to manage. A lot of mid-sized companies people have grown up in those companies from maybe 100 million to 1 billion. They've never been through a transformation.
And it's not their core skill set.
It's not.
Like, they know where they want to drive to, but not necessarily how to get there. So that's, right, I think, where, we become the insurance policy to make sure that it gets done properly, and that we're always thinking through, okay, what is the final business
Right.
outcome that we're looking for? How are we going to get there?
So we talk a lot, and we will talk a lot about digital transformation. And so I wanted to read a definition I got about digital transformation. It's the strategic integration of digital technology into all areas of the business, fundamentally changing operations, culture, and customer value. It involves using technology to streamline processes, enhance efficiencies, and adopt evolving market demands. Now, I think we'd both add to that, and measures business outcome and ROI.
Right. Yeah.
See that?
Yeah.
But what I like about that definition, and what I think is often missed, is process enhancements. I don't think people often think when they're doing a transformation, they're literally changing how people work. And today, so many people in, whether it's a sales organization or a CS or marketing, and we've seen this, is they've created workarounds to do their job over the years that is not in an SOP, that is not documented. I don't know one company who keeps process documentation and keeps it up to date.
Right.
And all these things create factors, because when you go into a session and you say, hey, tell me what you do, they're going to tell you this happy path of, oh, we do X, Y, and Z. And if you write that down and then say, oh, this is what you do, they'll be like, oh, well, wait a minute. On Tuesdays when it's raining, we do this. On Saturdays, at the end of the month, we have to do this because the file that we get actually is a CSV file and it needs to be a flat file. And we need to, all those manual steps actually hinder the success of the digital transformation. And a lot of times the battle that comes in is, well, IT didn't deliver me what I want. Well,
Did you
IT can't
tell them
deliver
what
you
you
what they
needed?
don't know.
Right.
And the business isn't disciplined, and not, I don't say that in a negative way, to keep up process documentation about exceptions on how they do their job because there was a gap in technology or they evolved their product or something in the business environment changed. They grew rapidly, so they put bubble gum and tape and glue, and now everybody realizes it's inefficient. So they're like, we're going to do a digital transformation. And people think it's a technology change, and it's not.
But we see that all the time. We work with really, really, really smart people,
Yeah,
extraordinarily smart people.
right. And
But
I think
sometimes we
that's
have to get out of our own way with all of those little bitty, processes that those micro processes that we've built
right,
out. Okay, now we need to just to modernize it, and let's take advantage of what we can in order to free up our time to add more value in different places. That's
right.
it.
And I think that the thing we always talk about is that transformation is a team sport. So often somebody owns the digital transformation in a company. And when I say somebody owns something, I believe they own the vision. They own rallying the troops and saying, guys, if we want to be successful, if we want to remove costs from our environment, we want to be more efficient, we have to change how we work. That's transformation is change, right?
Right.
So if you think on those terms, then it is somebody rallying them, whether it's the CCO or whether it's the CEO. But really, when it comes down to it, it's the role of IT to translate those business requirements into technology. It's the role of the business to understand what they're really transforming. Like, how do they become more efficient? And that a lot has to do with process and the way they work. I think it's up to the finance team to understand, well, where does the ROI come from? So we know what you want to do. We know what you're gonna do because you have these requirements and these platforms. Then how do I hold people accountable for that cost out? Because in my mind, there's like 4 areas that costs come out. It's efficiency. So you're being more efficient so you can use that time to do more value added activities, right? So if I save you 2 hours as a sales rep, I'm hoping those 2 hours get spent with you doing more deals, right? As a CS rep, I hope you're spending more time with our
Right.
customers.
Yeah,
Um,
renewing more customers or growing the account or
right.
whatever it might be. Absolutely.
So efficiency is one. I think increased revenue. So hey, I hope that if you're more efficient, we're increasing revenue, right?
Right.
I think the other is headcount management. And I purposely say headcount management because I think it could be, hey, your organization is going to stay flat so you can do more with the same heads. It could be that we're going to redeploy heads from here to here because now this is more efficient, but these people have valuable skill sets. They understand my customers and they understand my company. So I don't want to lose them as employees. Maybe I retrain them. Maybe you let some go. Like that's the reality of it too. Um, and then I think it's software savings, right? I think it's cost out. Like how can I be more efficient? Do I need 72 softwares to do this? And in the age
Am
of
I
AI,
using 10% of application, or am I using 80% and blowing it out?
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think that's a really good point because I think if people really analyzed how much of the capabilities they use of the softwares they spend, it would be that much. And I think the fear comes in is that there are always softwares that are niche that do things better than potentially larger platforms. So like the
Perfect.
Oracles, the Salesforces of the world, they tend to be, uh, a Swiss Army knife. Like you can have Marketing Cloud, you can have Sales Cloud, you can have Service Cloud, all on
Sure.
Salesforce or on Oracle or on Zendesk. The reality of it is there's also limitations where then you could have a niche player who is just focused on sales and all they do is sales and they do it really well and everything's buttoned up. But then if you buy 72 niche things, are you saving money? Are you getting scale of economy? Is your processes connected? Is your data connected?
And again, that's where that operational layer is
Right,
just, having a regular, like that is part of the job description,
right,
is measuring and making sure that you're getting the value that's
right,
appropriate to the investment.
right.
Uh,
So
so go
it's
ahead.
interesting because when we talk about digital transformation, so I want to like think about some stats here. So I love my stats. So 61% of business executives recognize it's a priority, and 94% of organizations already have a strategy. So that seems like, wow, that's a lot of people
Right?
saying, I need to do this. I'm
I
gonna
mean,
go
we should have clients coming out of our ears if that's the
right.
case.
Right. Right. I don't know. Where's the sign up sheet? Um, but the reality is it's not all, and some have quoted as far as like 40% of seeing a real good return on that investment. Um, but it's not all like rose-colored glasses, right? These things are challenging, they're hard, they take usually a long time. In some cases, it's a year-long effort, depending on the size of the transformation. Um,
Yep.
and I think uh, what I want to ask you, because you talked about this the other day, is what type of transformation are we doing?
Right. Absolutely. Are we looking for technology where it is about there's a new capability that we are bringing on? Like that's a transformation. Is it a process that we know our process is inefficient and we've got to completely retool? So I think part of it is just understanding what type um, of transformation are you looking for, and getting really tight on what are the single focus, what are the metrics, and then have we taken the time to properly baseline what those metrics are. We've seen consultants come in with these wild-eyed assumptions about we are going to save millions of dollars, and we start breaking it down with, okay, how do you know? Well, these people are not going to have to complete these tasks anymore. Okay, great. And that's hundreds of hours. Okay, how'd you get to that? Because this person only does that once a week
Hey,
as part of their job. So we got to really rationalize where these millions are coming from.
right,
But it is worth noting that focus is one of the things that when we don't have focus and we are distracted, it takes us away from actually getting the project done. And so we are really focused on what are the outcomes that we're looking for? How do we baseline to know, okay, where are we today, so that we know where are we making incremental
right.
improvements, and then putting a plan together for that transformation that really understands, okay, what is it? What type of transformation? It's going to be a little bit different approach depending on what type of transformation we're looking for.
Yeah. And I mean, these transformations comes with challenges, right? And so
No,
I think it's funny because I think people don't, everybody wants a positive spin on everything. And I think
sure.
that's so Pollyanna, to not need to be negative, but it's like, it's not reality. We're met with controversy, we're met with conflict, and we have to resolve it. I mean, that's just life, right? And so I think it's a natural part of a project where you're going to ebb and flow. There are some days where like everything is green, everything is running. And then when it flips red, what do you do? And so some of the challenges, going back to our metrics, which I love, is, and this one I absolutely love, the top kind of impact or challenge that people have quoted, 32% of people who are doing digital transformation, is complexity of current environment and siloed mindset and behaviors. And I love that last one because I do believe that communication is 90% of why a transformation fails. 1000% is this siloed mentality of like, I'm marketing, I do marketing. I'm sales, I do sales. And there's some truth to that within the role that you play in the company. Yes, I'm a sales rep, so I'm going to do sales. I'm not going to worry about the marketing campaign. I'm going to worry about the lead I get and transferring that lead, but I'm not going to get involved in that. But I
As
think
my
it,
wise friend Rich once said, the hip bone is connected to the leg bone.
right,
Like it's all connected. And particularly when we do have to look at things from that holistic perspective to determine, okay, where are my stakeholders? It is not
right,
always so obvious because there's an
right.
upstream and a downstream effect of all these things.
1000%. And I feel like as leaders in the organization, and I will refer to leaders as ELT and SLT, is it's up to them to have those conversations and guide their teams. Because again, I, as a sales rep, am not going to have time, or should I bother understanding the marketing or understanding the CX? But somebody has to put this all together for us in a way that it's orchestrated, that I go from one place to another. So as a leader of marketing, I don't understand our sales process, or I don't understand our customer success process, or our products, or our legal, regulatory, privacy, however you want to kind of talk about those different things. I think that's a problem. And that siloed behavior comes out in missed requirements, inefficient technology that really doesn't help them make the mark and get to the outcome. And I think it's a problem. The next one is gaps in technical talent. And I would say it's not just technical talent.
No, no, we've got to have change is uncomfortable. We got to get really used to being uncomfortable,
Right.
because we are continually changing, and we know that it doesn't make it easier to go through, but there are good ways to do it, bad ways. Communication, absolutely critical. Knowing where you're going, absolutely critical. All of these things work together. Yeah.
So I think, as we go through this journey with our customers and we bring people on, I think these are the stuff I would love to bring and talk about. I think that, these programs that we've done, and we've done it at the enterprise level for a number of years, it's never always smooth. It's never always perfect. And I think that the way you get to perfect is constantly having the really tough, uncomfortable conversations that challenge people's beliefs and thinking around how you successfully navigate transformation.
And it's those stories that I'm the most looking
I
forward
am
to,
too. So
because
what are you
that's
most
that's the
excited
fun
about
part.
then? So a couple more minutes we have here. What are you most
Mhm.
excited about that we're going to be doing on the podcast?
I'm interested to hear from some of the people who we have lined up, because they're real world stories. Not everything went great. I'm really interested to hear, okay, where did they learn the most? AI coming on is such an exciting area, but to do that in a way that goes fast, because everybody wants to go fast, and AI is going to let us go fast. When we are thinking about how do we bring AI into an organization, I'm really interested in hearing, how'd you do it? How'd you set it up? How'd you put guardrails in place? How'd you go fast and maybe build some pilots and then move that into an operational environment? I'm really excited to get deep in some of those
Yeah,
stories.
I think the ethical issues around AI are interesting. I think
Hmm.
the notion that AI is taking all our jobs. I know I've had a number of sleepless nights thinking I'm not going to have a job in a year, you know. And I think that what I have seen and what I've learned the most about doing the AI projects with the clients we've worked with is, once again, how critical it is that your data and your content is really dialed in. Because I know from most companies in marketing, I think you can attest to this, content is never thought about as, we need to keep this evergreen, we need to keep this refreshed. Who has a stable of writers writing
Right.
content, right?
Sometimes
Well,
do.
marketers do, but I mean, products
Right.
support,
Right.
you see them,
Everybody's becoming a marketer, which
right?
is great, and AI can help with that. But yeah, you're
Yeah.
right.
So
Now we got to keep it pristine. So excited about that. The other things are, to get into the G word, one of our favorite G words, governance,
yeah.
operating. How do you get in? How do you take the complexity out, keep it simple in order to make sure that you're moving forward? So I'm super excited about where we're
Yeah.
going with this.
I always say that whenever I say the word governance. I know it's a dirty word. And I think it's because people have this perception that governance slows things down. And I believe governance provides clarity. And I think
Yeah.
the more clarity you have amongst people, going back to communications, then the easier it is to know what lane I'm swimming in and how I contribute. And I think that part of transformations for me is probably one of the most critical. I think people, mostly employees, is, I have this concept. It's called information guarding. I think most people guard information because they're like, well, I can't tell everybody everything. And that's true. there are certain things you didn't need to pay, and you do need to frame the conversation appropriately. So I'm not going to say everybody should just regurgitate everything, but I do believe at times, because we've all sat in those rooms with C-level executives, they're like, oh, we shouldn't tell people that, or that shouldn't be said. And you're like, but you know what? Here's what's going to happen is this person is going to continue to go this way when you really want them to go left, but they don't know you want them to go left because you're not telling them. You're not setting up the structure for people to consume that information and to pivot. And what often happens is you then launch it and you're like, hey guys, we're working differently now. And people are like, well, where did this come from? I haven't had time to prepare. And the number one question that when I was in operations, I get asked, well, what do I do with this now? I do it this way. So do I just stop doing that? And no one ever had the answer. No one ever had the answer because they didn't know they did it. Right? So I agree with you. I'm excited to have all those conversations and more. And I think it's going to be a fun, well, I hope it's going to be a fun podcast. I hope people listen and enjoy it. We're not going to do stand up, so it's not going to be that funny.
Thank God for that.
Yeah. No, I won't put us on it. Cool.
Good.
So we'll have our first episode is Ken Chu, who's a good friend of both of ours. Ken, another ex-Dell and ex-Salesforce. I worked with him at Dell. And he was part of the Salesforce professional services. So he's seen implementations, built systems. So I'm really excited to get into that conversation.
Super creative, super techie.
Super creative, and a really amazing story. I mean, just it was just the other day he posted him and his wife were being interviewed because they do long distance marriage because they are invested so much in their kids. And, I won't even go through the accomplishments that his kids as teenagers have. Their resume is longer than ours at this point.
For sure.
TED Talks and, building drones. And his daughter wrote a book at 8. And, just amazing human beings, raising amazing human beings, but very smart. So I'm really excited to talk to him.
Absolutely.
Cool. So we invite everybody to follow us on the podcast journey and continue to tune in. And we'd love you to engage.
And tell us what you want to hear.
Yeah, tell us what you want to hear. If you want to be a guest, reach out. We'd love to talk to you. And until next time, we'll talk to you soon.
Perfect.
I gotta get my thing all the way over here.